first and foremost, taxpayers clearly have responsibilities to pay the right amount of tax at the right time. And in that regard, I think the Fair Tax Pledge is right on the money there. So I'll be interesting to have a look a bit. I'm thinking about signing it, Richard. But I think it's a good initiative because that is the responsibility of taxpayers. That's where it comes down to. I think. But there's other responsibilities here as well. We have the government. I'll come back to this probably in a second, but the government has responsibilities in this. Consumers, we have responsibilities in this. We have the ability to walk away from coffee shops we don't like. I have to say that one coffee shop I do not darken the doors of. And that isn't just because I actually don't like the coffee either, which is true. But I actually don't like some of what I'm hearing. So I don't go there. So, we do have consumer power here as well. HMRC, we heard that earlier on, but I think HMRC have a huge role to play here, and we all know that they're not being given the resources to fulfil it. All that's happening is that they are shedding staff left, right and centre, and that's a serious problem to this. And of course, we as tax advisors we have our own responsibility and roles to play here. So, we are part of this. And I think as an extension of that, in the boardroom, we heard a lot about multinationals. The boards of multinational companies have responsibilities. All board directors have responsibilities here. And in fact, that comes down the chain as well. And Richard was talking earlier about problems that we now have with company law and submission of accounts. Yes, I agree with that. I think we have moved a long way from the days when we started our accountancy training where all companies had to submit accounts. So we've got a long way from that. So I think, we all have roles and responsibilities to play here. I tried to make a list of when we had Margaret Hodge here, I thought was a very interesting session. I listed down 8 points that she mentioned, some of which I've effectively just touched on. But she did start by saying we touched a raw nerve, and I think she did. She touched on something that needed to be done and needed to be aired. So I think they actually did a great public service to the UK to actually touch on a lot of this. How we take it forward is clearly important, but I think we have at least started that discussion, and I think by having these sorts of debates and events, we will arrive at a consensus. So I listed down 8 points she raised. The OECD actions, well, clearly what comes out of the OECD is clearly important, although I would just say I think also there's a segmentation here issue. We have the multinational element to this, but we do also have the sort of UK aspect, and we have multinationals, SMEs, and I think they're probably sometimes different solutions, and we probably need to bear that in mind. So I think the OECD work is hugely important. We do need to support it, but I have to say I was a bit worried by the comments that apparently somebody said the US, that people were saying that the project was just a ruse to cut US jobs. I think there is a serious worry as to whether the US are actually going to sign up to this. Quite where then that will go, I don't know, but the UK, as we saw, has already introduced diverted profits tax, so I think, unfortunately, we'll probably go down the road of unilateral action, but I think we should try and avoid that if we can. Margaret did say about people speaking with forked tongue. I wasn't quite sure which sector she was talking about there, but clearly there are people talking with forked tongue. Just picking up on what Jane was saying, our evidence is that the scale of avoidance appears to be reducing, but I think there is a hard core and a hard core of people who will just carry on regardless. And I think we can have all the rules in the world, I think, and all the sort of policing, but some people just seem unable or unwilling or not willing to actually not carry on doing tax avoidance. And I think those people are a real worry to us, and I don't quite know how we get to them, because it seems, we've had a whole raft of rules in the last Finance Act on top of previous ones, and they still carry on, it seems. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to get to those. I think we need to work on that but we need to drive those people out of the system, I think that's for sure. Margaret touched on simplifying the system. Well, who wouldn't agree with that? We've got the longest tax code in the world. But I have to say, I do think parliamentarians actually need to take more responsibility for it. I think Margaret sort of slightly had to pass the buck there. She talked about, we don't know about what finance bill clauses were sort of passing. I mean, we had the Finance Act 2015, a lengthy bill passed in, was it 3 hours? It's not really the right way to make law. I mean, my personal view is if Parliament isn't happy with the way they're making laws, then they need to change it. You know, the power is in their hands to change it. Perhaps they need to start by reducing the size of finance bills and actually giving it proper and due consideration, perhaps with help from external bodies and stakeholders and civil society. So, and perhaps, you know, we've just had the triple lock on tax from Mr. Osborne, but perhaps we need some sort of lock on the size of finance bills, because it seems as though, you know, you can just, we've had this government said that it would, the pace of change was slow in 2010, and we've had the 2 longest Finance Act in history, and another one that wasn't far behind it. So I rest my case. All politicians seem to want to do is increase the complexity of the UK tax rules. That cannot be right, and they have to accept responsibility for that. HMRC, well, we talked about that. I won't go on because we had a very heartfelt presentation on that, but it's a serious worry that HMRC is not being given the tools and resources to actually properly police the tax system. And I think that's going to get worse. I mean, our members are constantly saying they cannot get through on the phones, that we heard 40% in the IRS there. At the rate we're going on, I don't think we're going to be far behind it. We need to press the case, I think, for more resources and proper resources beginning to HMRC to actually police the tax system. She did talk about more litigation. Well, I have to say, as an accountant, the maxim we always had was never ever go to law. Because it's just a disaster. It takes ages, it costs you a fortune, and you never get resolution for 10 years or more. And we're already seeing this, that the courts and tribunals are being, you know, we're having a whole load more new judges. Apparently cases are sort of now going 2 or 3 years down the line at least before you get hearings. Personally, I'm not sure that is the answer. I feel if that's the answer for most of it, I think something's going wrong. We need a different system. Perhaps we need, you know, perhaps we can have purpose-built legislation, or Parliament can at least tell us what the will of the legislation actually was. So, you know, I think there are ways we could do that, but personally, I think more litigation, I'm not sure that's actually in the long-term interest of the UK. Greater transparency, well, we've heard a lot about that. That's hugely important, and I think, you know, we're seeing it, and the things like the fair tax mark, country-by-country reporting, we're seeing a slow but sure move towards greater transparency, and I think we need to welcome that. Public procurement, again, I think, you know, that it's quite right, you know, that you should take into account the sort of ethical or position of suppliers when you're actually looking at public procurement. So I think that, you know, that again, that's something we should support. And advisors, I mean, advisors, yes, we do have a responsibility here. I think things have and are changing. As I say, I think there's a hardcore of advisors, if that's the right word. I'm not sure that most of the time a lot of the schemes actually even work. So that's a serious problem, because I don't even think it's avoidance. I think it's probably more like evasion. But I think we have problems there that do need to be addressed. But, you know, there's still a lot of advisors out there who are not members of, say, professional bodies, who are offshore. It's a difficult picture, but I think we need to get it down to a real hardcore of people who are not willing to, if you like, play by the rules. But we probably do need to work out how we actually address that. So I think, in summary, that's what I'd like to say. I think there's lots there that we can agree with, but I think we all, as I say, have a responsibility here. So I've enjoyed the day, Richard. Thank you very much, and I'll look forward to having a look at the pledge on the train home.